Every single day, humanity obsessively pumps over 100 million barrels of a highly toxic, foul-smelling, pitch-black sludge out of the Earth's crust. It is a suffocating, sticky, radioactive mess. But somehow, this exact same puddle of ancient black goo flies jet planes at Mach 2, paves our highways, grows our food, and forms the very plastic screen you are staring at right now. Wait, what? How does one disgusting puddle of earth vomit magically transform into completely different, crystal clear, highly explosive liquids? Most people think crude oil is basically just dirty gasoline waiting to be pumped into your car. Or, if you grew up looking at plastic toy packaging, you probably think it's made of melted dinosaurs. Let's get that prehistoric lie out of the way first. You aren't burning a T-Rex. You are burning a colossal, subterranean graveyard of microscopic ocean algae and plankton. These organisms died hundreds of millions of years ago, sank to the bottom of ancient dead seas, got buried under millions of tons of sand and silt, and were essentially pressure cooked in the dark into a chaotic, chemical soup. This soup is called crude oil, and it is a complete molecular disaster. It is entirely made of hydrocarbons, which is just carbon and hydrogen atoms holding hands in millions of different, totally randomized shapes and sizes. Picture a massive, tangled bowl of molecular spaghetti. Some of these hydrocarbon chains are incredibly short, nervous, and energetic. Others are long, dense, heavy, and incredibly lazy. In its natural, raw, unrefined state, this black spaghetti is completely and utterly useless to modern machinery. If you poured raw crude oil directly into your car's gas tank right now, your engine wouldn't just sputter. It would choke on the heavy tars, misfire from the volatile gases, and die a horrible, smoky, violently expensive death. For most of human history, oil was just a nuisance that ruined water wells, or a sticky tar used to waterproof ancient boats. No one looked at this foul puddle and thought it could propel a chunk of metal into orbit. So, how did we figure out how to tame the soup? How do we rip it apart into the exact ingredients we need? To unlock the secret hidden inside the slime, we essentially have to perform medieval alchemy on a horrifying, industrial scale. We don't just filter the oil. We have to violently, physically attack it. Imagine the largest, most intimidating steampunk fortress you've ever seen. A sprawling metallic city of silver pipes, smokestacks, and towering cylindrical columns that stretch into the sky, constantly venting steam and fire. This is an oil refinery, and it is one of the most dangerous, highly pressurized environments on the planet. Millions of gallons of highly flammable liquid are constantly flowing through its veins, waiting for a single microscopic spark to turn the entire complex into a smoking crater. The process begins when we take this raw black sludge, pump it through a labyrinth of pipes, and shove it into the bottom of a colossal steel furnace. And then? We literally light a blazing fire under it. But we aren't just warming it up. We crank the heat to a blistering, flesh-melting 400 degrees Celsius, about 750 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, think about what happens when you boil water on your stove. It bubbles and turns into steam, right? Well, at 400 degrees Celsius, this thick, heavy, liquid sludge does the exact same thing. It doesn't just get hot, it completely vaporizes. We take a dark, heavy liquid and turn it into a terrifying, superheated, highly explosive ghost cloud of ancient carbon. It's roaring inside these pipes, trying desperately to expand, rushing toward the massive fractionating columns that dominate the refinery skyline. But before we follow this explosive ghost cloud up the steel tower and uncover the bizarre physics of how it magically transforms into your car's fuel, subscribe to this almost dead channel. Seriously, it takes exactly 5 seconds, it costs you absolutely nothing, and it fuels the algorithm like high-octane nightmare juice so I can keep making these. Done? Awesome. Back to the fire. So, we have this roaring vapor cloud of vaporized oil entering the bottom of a massive, hollow steel tower. This is the exact moment the alchemy happens. But there are no moving parts inside this tower. There are no blades, no spinning centrifuges, no complex nanobots sorting the molecules. The entire global transportation network relies entirely on one remarkably simple, almost bizarre physical quirk of this steel tower. The secret to pulling gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel out of thin air lies in the internal temperature of the tower itself. It is extremely, brutally hot at the bottom, right where the vapor enters. But as you climb higher and higher up this colossal column, it gets cooler and cooler. This is called a temperature gradient. And this gradient triggers an elegantly simple process known as fractional distillation. Remember how that crude oil was a tangled bowl of different-sized hydrocarbon spaghetti? Well, every single one of those different chains has a completely different boiling point. The massive, heavy, lazy chains, the ones with dozens of carbon atoms clumped together, have very high boiling points. They can't survive as a gas for very long unless it is blisteringly hot. So, just slightly above the furnace, where it's still scorching, these heavy vapors immediately cool down enough to turn back into a thick liquid. They condense. They rain down into specialized collection trays at the very bottom to become heavy bunker fuel for massive cargo ships, thick lubricating oils for factory machines, and the literal black asphalt you drive your car on. But what about the shorter, lighter chains? They don't condense at the bottom. They keep rising like invisible ghosts through the liquid raining down. Further up the tower, where the temperature drops to around 250 degrees Celsius, the medium-sized chains finally realize it's too cold to stay a gas. They sweat, they condense, and they pool into their own separate trays. This specific middle tray collects diesel fuel for heavy trucks and freight trains. Higher still, where it's even cooler, the next batch of chains drops out of the vapor. This is kerosene, which is highly refined and pumped directly into the wings of commercial jet planes. Even higher, near the very top of the tower where it's relatively cool, the smallest, most energetic liquid chains finally condense out of the cloud, and boom. You have crystal clear, highly combustible gasoline for your car. The tower is literally a giant, fiery sorting hat. It separates a terrifying chemical soup into perfectly organized, explosive liquids based entirely on the exact temperature they decide to sweat. And those tiny, hyperactive hydrocarbon chains that are so small they never condense? They escape out the very top as invisible gases. That's the butane in your lighter and the propane you use to grill hot dogs in your backyard. It is an absolute masterpiece of chemical engineering. But the insanity doesn't stop with simply boiling the sludge. Because humanity loves driving, and we have over 1 billion cars on the road, we need way more gasoline than the distillation tower naturally provides. And honestly, we don't need nearly as much heavy ship fuel or thick asphalt. The natural ratios of the Earth's oil simply do not match modern human demand. So, scientists invented a brutal, almost violent secondary process called cracking. We literally take the leftover heavy, lazy, useless hydrocarbon chains from the bottom of the barrel. We pump them into a totally different machine, blast them with extreme heat, intense pressure, and heavy metal chemical catalysts, and we forcefully snap their molecular spines. We violently break these long chains into smaller, valuable pieces of gasoline. We are chemically restructuring ancient dead life at a microscopic level just so you can afford to drive to the drive-thru. And the absolute wildest part of this entire process? The journey of crude oil doesn't end in a combustion engine. The tiny leftovers and byproducts from these exact same boiling towers are quietly shipped off to chemical plants to become the literal building blocks of our modern world. Those molecules are transformed into synthetic fabrics, meaning the clothes you are wearing right now are likely spun from petroleum. They are turned into the artificial fertilizers that grow the food on your plate. They are morphed into the plastic insulation coating the electrical wires hiding inside your walls.